Okay, sword friends, this is not a sword. So what is this? This is a print. I was contacted a little while ago by Darren from Swordsman's Boutique, and he asked me if I wanted to review a piece of art. Now, right up front, I should be very candid. I know about swords, and you're welcome to ask me my opinion about swords, and to some degree you can ask me about, the wildlife of Florida or dinosaurs. Those are things that I have an interest in and spend more time than I probably should researching. I don't know anything about art. I spend time looking at art, but usually only to learn about the history that's being depicted in the art, not about art that you can actually hang on the wall to decorate on. And so I was very candid with Darren. I was very grateful. I said, thank you so much for the offer, but I'm not really qualified for that. Darren is a very kind and gracious man, and he insisted that he really wanted me to have the chance to review one of the products that he was that he has for sale, because again, it's in the context of Chinese martial history, and it's a piece that I'm very familiar with. So on that basis, I did say that I'd go ahead and do this review. And so I'm doing this, but understand I am no authority when it comes to physical art media that you can consume. So I'm just going to review it on the basis of that. So very quickly, because we're going to talk about the history of the piece, but very quickly, uh, when looking at it just on the screen, to me, it didn't look like anything particularly special. It just looked like something that perhaps someone could print out and stick in a frame and send right off. And I mentioned to him that I thought that the price was very high for the amount that you would get back. And I showed him one or two comparison pieces. Now, since then, I see that he seems to have perhaps taken those notes to heart, and the pricing that he is currently selling these for seems to be a much more reasonable rate. So currently, this particular piece, and he sells several different pieces on his website, currently sells for $119. Again, I do not have a very good sense for if this is significantly good or significantly bad value for the money. What I can say is that the quality of the craftsmanship appears to be very, very good. All of the attention to detail in the way that it's assembled, all of the materials used, the way that it's matted and framed, all seem to be very high quality, more than I certainly could if I were putting something together just using materials that I could find in a frame that I'd buy out of a store. Also, the quality of the print that is used is much, much higher than what I would be able to produce from the images that I have access to online. So this is again a very famous image, and I can get very high detailed versions of it, but I don't think that I'd be able to come up with a way to print it out at this high fidelity at this large an image, because again, it's currently about I think this is 80 centimeters in length. It might be 85 centimeters in length. So on the whole, I am very, very happy with the quality of the image. Is it worth that price to you? Perhaps, because to the best of my knowledge, this is fulfilling an art niche that doesn't currently exist. So this isn't hand painted, but this is a high fidelity print, and it's a type of art that really doesn't exist. I'm going to be very happy to mount this on. I don't have space here, but I have a work office, and I'll be very happy to mount this in the office wall. So if this appeals to you, I can very heartily endorse that the product that you will get is going to be very, very nice, and I would encourage you to look into Darren's wares, any of them. And again, there's a variety of them. Some are even larger than this, and the quality of the material that you'll get is very, very nice. So what is the image that's actually being depicted here? This comes from sometime in the 16th century, and is by an unknown Chinese artist, and it's depicting a battle on a river. And this is depicting a battle between Ming military forces and pirates. Not just any pirates, ones that are called the Wokou. Wokou literally means dwarf bandit, or perhaps more appropriately, Japanese bandit. So during the 14th and 15th and into the 16th century, there was coastal piracy occurring along the coast of China that the Ming had to deal with. And the identity of these pirates is a subject of constant scholarly debate. But generally speaking, they're identified with Japanese pirates. Now, were all of the pirates Japanese? Probably not. In fact, there's a pretty good indication that only a fraction of them were Japanese by the time of this painting. Perhaps maybe only 20 or 30% of them were Japanese, and a lot of them were just Chinese. So maybe 60, 70% of them were Chinese pirates by ethnicity. So you have this whole group of lowlifes, outcasts of society that have banded together. They're outcasts from Japan, they're outcasts from China. They get together, they go and form these huge, they live on the islands, they live on ships, they go from town to town raiding, just like Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's Pirates of the Chinese Sea. And what is being depicted here is some of the combat that occurs with these two groups. And it's very interesting because we have some of the differences between the arms and armor that's going on, and we have some clues that are going on here. If we start on the left, the boat that's coming in under the bridge, one of the most interesting things to me is we have a depiction of a guy wielding two dao. And these dao might be considered yan chi dao, a type of goose wing saber. They have this flared clipped point at the end. But what's interesting is they don't appear to be depicted with any type of husho, any type of guard on them. Also interesting is that he's wielding two. If I were him, I would probably prefer to have a shield in the other hand. This is not uncommon, though. We do see instances where soldiers are on ships and are depicted having two dao instead of one dao and one shield. So pei dao and pai dao rather, tang pai shield and a dao on the other hand. So this seems to be a kind of common configuration for shipborne individuals going into combat for whatever reason in China. If we go on to the central ship, we see the central ship doesn't seem to have any other swords very obvious. There are plenty of spears that are being used. There's also lots of bow that are bow and arrows that are being deployed. There's archers being deployed. You'll notice the bows are of the recurved style. There are some pole arms that are on the back of the ship. Notice that they're out of the way. They're kind of hanging out in the aft, ready for deploy, perhaps once they get to land. See tiger fork and monk's spade that are ready to go, along with flags to perhaps identify different units. And a cool drummer in the middle, perhaps to signal when to attack. Then, once we go over to the pirates' boats, which look to be a little bit smaller in scale, you'll notice that the bows that they're using are decidedly larger. Now, these could be depicting Japanese-style yumi. They're not, if so, they're not particularly faithfully rendered, as they're pretty uniform in how they're being held, whereas yumi are decidedly longer on the top arm than on the bottom arm. One guy in the front also has a quiver on the back. I don't recognize that style of quiver in particular, but again, I don't specialize in archery. Then we have a bunch of swords. They pay careful attention to make sure that the pirates have lots and lots of swords present, and all of them have the same kind of very long, very thin, what I would call a very Japanese style of design. Once again, no type of guard are being displayed. Now that may or may not be accurate. During this time, we're not too far from the Muromachi period, and guardless swords were not uncommon. The type of Aikuchi style fittings where there's no suba were popular, depending on what type of sword and depending on how it was being used. So that type of sword wouldn't necessarily have been unknown to someone who was bumping into Japanese swords during this period. Also of note, you'll see at least one man in the middle wielding two swords at a time. Now, as mentioned before, this seems to be a kind of common depiction in Chinese art. It seems much less common in Japanese depictions of swordsmen of the time. So whether this is something that was common with Japanese pirates or just a way that the Chinese artist is depicting Japanese pirates and just showing how cool they are, not entirely clear. So again, this scene, this beautiful scene of the Wokou attack reminds us that during the Ming, all sorts of swords came over from Japan, either by trade or by capture. And as a result, we have Chinese swords that developed that bear a resemblance to Japanese swords. And we do have Japanese swords that are mounted in Chinese fittings, but we also have plenty of Chinese swords that have been made in in styles that are very similar to the Japanese form. So this is a copy of one such sword. This is the LK Chen crossbowman Dao, and it has very Chinese motifs, Chinese style grip wrap, Chinese style tang that goes all the way through to the end, but it obviously has Japanese style cross section, Japanese style geometry, and a Japanese style blade shape. So this is a very interesting meeting of the cultures that we have depicted in this piece of artwork. Very happy that I do have it, and I encourage everyone to check out the Swordsman Boutique by Darren. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this, and we'll look forward to more sword history next time. Take care, guys.